so our next step, our activity for the day is actually to help you create a home for one of the many animals we find in our neighborhoods. We are going to help out the toad. Now this is an American toad. The American toad is the toad most commonly found in Minnesota, in our backyards, our yards, our gardens, our forests, grasses. We find this guy a lot, and he can get pretty good size. Now sometimes, well, we have another creature. I'm going to pull him out. This guy. We have frogs too, and frogs and toads can be kind of similar, and sometimes it's hard to tell what you're looking at. So I wanted to give you guys some tips on how to tell the difference between a toad and a frog. First, I want you to look at their skin. The toad over here, very bumpy skin and very dry skin. If you pick him up or touch him, he'll feel dry. Whereas the frog is going to have much smoother skin and oftentimes damp or slightly wet. Now another thing to note is their legs. So toads tend to have shorter, stubbier legs, and they scoot like this, or kind of like they like to crawl. Whereas frogs have longer legs, and they're made for jumping. Now, as far as their noses go, struggling with the papers. As far as their noses go, toads tend to have sort of wide noses, whereas frogs kind of have longer noses. So you can look at the skin and the nose and the legs and kind of figure out, what animal you're looking at here. Another thing to note is that frogs are rarely found away from water. They're often very close to a pond or a river or a lake because they need the water. Toads are found near water in the springtime, but during the rest of the year you can find them up on a hill, in a grassland, in a forest. They'll migrate away from water a little bit. I often find them in my garden. We put boards down to walk on so we don't accidentally walk on our vegetables. And they like to burrow underneath the boards and hide down there. So you can lift up boards and rocks and sometimes find toads. Another place that I will see them is on my sidewalk that goes up to my front door, especially towards the end of the day. The sun warms the sidewalk and the toads will kind of come out and sit on the warm cement. So those are a couple places I find them in my house. So today for our activity, I want to show you 4 different ways to build a toad house, or a toad abode, if you will. And so these is a place that a toad can find shelter, it can feel safe, it can stay cool. But first I want to talk to you a little bit about what is necessary for a toad house. In order to build a toad house, you need 5 things. You need a place that is shady. Toads don't like to be hot. They don't want to be in the middle of a sunny yard. So you got to find a tree or a garden or some place to put the toad house where there's shade so the toad can stay cool. You also need dirt. Remember I said they like to burrow? That means like dig under into the dirt. Toads really like to burrow into the dirt. So you have to have some nice loose dirt that they can actually move around and get in. A garden is a great place because toads eat loads of bugs. Some of those bugs that, really bug us, like mosquitoes and flies. So toads will really eat hundreds of those a day. So a garden is a great place for toads because they have all those bugs to eat. And you also need a door. They got to have some way to get into their toad house. And this last one, this is actually a little dish that's showing water. Toads like to have some place they can get some fresh water. So a little dish or something that can get filled up by rain, or if you want to just dump a cup in it every now and again. If you have that by your toad house, that really helps a lot. So we're going to show you 4 different ways to build a toad house. Everything from natural. So you could go walk in your backyard. You could collect sticks and rocks, leaves. They like to have sort of damp or dry leaves. And you can sort of build different toad houses. You can go all the way to a fancy toad house where you decorate it with paint and jewels and make it all sorts of pretty. So I'll show you some different examples. My first one over here, I gathered just some sticks that I found in my backyard here, and I just kind of propped them up together and I made sort of a toad cave. Now you want to have the opening about 5 inches wide because toads can get really, really big, and about 3 inches high. So, but this is just a nice way. I just propped it up here. I'll kind of show you. So I just took the bark and the rock and kind of propped it up like this. you could go in a woods or in your backyard or somewhere and just find some things, prop it together, and make a nice little place for the toad to hang out, nice and cool. Now, if you have bricks or like some larger rocks around your house, you can kind of set these up in a garden like this and say simply put another board or another brick or another rock over that. And again, you're kind of creating that little opening. You have some nice loose dirt because the toad needs to be able to dig into the dirt, helps them stay cool and safe. The other thing you can do is if you happen to have a pot. Now you don't need a nice pot. You can see my pot's cracked here. If you have a broken pot or any pot that you don't want, you pop that right on top, and that makes a really nice toad house. They got lots of space in there. Again, they can get in. That doorway's nice and open, and I kind of blocked off the back here so they feel nice and safe. Now the third one I'm going to show you also uses the pot, but I gotta actually move my bricks. They're kind of dirty. And we're going to take the rock out too. We'll just put the rock over here. So the third one also uses a pot, and it's a bit more of a toad cave than a toad house here. This works well also if you have a broken pot or a nice pot, but you're going to kind of dig down and scoot that pot just right in there. You want it about half in the dirt and half out of the dirt. And you're going to scoot the soil right back in and there. And then you have sort of a nice little toad cave. And if you want to, make it a little bit more sheltered, you could add a little barrier right there, and you could even add another thing right here. Once you get the building blocks, you can kind of build it however you want, as long as it's got a nice little hole. Now with this, you could leave the pot plain. It's got a nice, pretty color, or you could decorate it. You could paint it, you could bedazzle it with jewels. I wouldn't recommend glitter just because it might get into the inside. And I wouldn't paint the inside because toads and frogs tend to breathe through their skin and they can absorb toxins through their skin. We don't want that to happen. But painting and gluing on the top is just fine. Now, those are some more natural ones, things you can find in a garage, in a backyard, garden shed. If you want to get really fancy, you can go to a craft store and you can pick up some modeling clay. So that's what I did. I picked up some modeling clay at a craft store, and I rolled it out and I kind of built my own toad house here. And then as you can see, I had a lot of fun decorating it with my kids. We painted it, and then I got a hot glue gun and I let them sort of pick where they wanted to put the jewels and stuff. And you've still got the entrance right here, and I actually made little troughs down here that would catch water from the rain. So he's got water, he's got a hole, he's got shade, and we'll probably put this someplace shady in our house and see if we can capture or make a little home for some of our toads. So those are just a few different ways that you can make a toad house. Again, real simple materials all the way up to fancier materials. If you want to go do it today, you can go try it, or if you want to go get some arts and crafts stuff and make a day of it as a family later on, you can do that as well.